In our Data Masterclass podcast, data leaders share their unique stories. In this episode, we have Aleksejs Plotnikovs, who spent 15 years at Microsoft as the Director of EMEA Data, Analytics and AI. And today, we are going to talk about his recent published book, Data Management Strategy at Microsoft. Let us welcome your host, Alex Borek.
All right, my data friends, we have Aleksejs Plotnikovs with us today. He has spent the last 15 years at Microsoft building their entire data capabilities. I think not only in Europe, but also in Europe and working also in global roles as far as I understood. And Alexey has just published actually his first book on the data journey at Microsoft. And I had a really the big pleasure to read one of the first readers probably, of that book, but I think there are already some from what I saw on social media. Alexey was kind enough to show me a preview, send it as a review version to me. And it looks a fabulous book filled with stories around, how to handle data in a large corporate. And I think it has something for everyone at every step in the journey. And we're going to unpack that today in our Data Masters podcast. Welcome to the new season. Welcome, Aleksejs.
Thank you, Alex.
So, show us your book.
Well, it's a big one. Yeah. So I was not expecting it to be actually so big. 250 pages, but it's also pretty, massive. But I hope it's a really good collection of great stories for any data professional. So just read through.
I think it feels so heavy because there's so much content inside.
And so much stories, right? Value.
It's all your stories. It's condensed. Yeah. It's really condensed. And also like it's not. I think it's the format is quite a big format as well. It's almost like full letter page. So wonderful. It's wonderful to have you with us. You're one of our Data Masterclass coaches. And today we're going to unpack some of your wisdom. And so, Alexey, tell us basically almost your entire career at Microsoft. What brought you to Microsoft back then?
I actually started to work as a software engineer on data, kind of building custom ERP system many years back. And then I was getting so excited about the data and those early SQL capabilities. I went to work for a telecom business because those days telecoms were like really glorious companies, and they had those Oracle databases, Oracle data warehousing, analytical processing, things like nobody else would have those days. And so I've spent with Oracle technologies kind of like 6-7 years perhaps, and then joined Accentra. And actually, Accentra what brought me to Microsoft because they started to do some data improvements in the Microsoft, and they were searching for, the people who could help them with. And that's how I got to the Microsoft environment. And then it was, hard to leave.
And was Accentra back then was that Andersen Consulting?
It was Accentra already, and we've been this Accentra Technologies, I think it was called. It's this type of a technical consultancy side. Yes. And we had this highly regional model. I was one of few persons those days in Baltics, and they had to find me in Baltics to cover, the Scandinavia and Eastern Europe and, all that type of a big region. So it was fun.
So I guess that this was one of the early days of the Accentra practice on data warehousing, data management.
Yeah, we've been really just pioneers on this. And we've been lucky that we had such a great playfield with Microsoft, where to, test all those approaches, including some early change management, navigating this stakeholders landscape and different budgets, and like how do you really make the progress on this work, and also do a little bit of the politics.
So maybe let's untangle it from your last role. So the last role that you had at Microsoft was the European leader for data analytics and AI. Is that right? At Microsoft.
Yeah. So I was basically the most senior person in EMEA from the team who runs the data at Microsoft. And it was an interesting role. Yeah, we've tapped in so many things, into the data governance, into the modern data platform, including with data mesh capabilities, and much else. It was this type of a multifaceted where you keep with the current delivery with a lot of business to run and budget to be responsible for and so on. But at the same time, you also look forward and you onboard those new segments, new capabilities, new domains, new businesses almost at Microsoft. So it was interesting, yeah.
And you're running that in EMEA, so not only Europe, even beyond Europe. And I think the special thing of your role was it was not part of the cloud stack, go to market, but it was really the data platform of Microsoft in EMEA.
Correct.
To manage all the Microsoft business basically on it.
Yeah.
And so what can you give us a glimpse, what is inside a Microsoft own data platform? What's inside there? Why does it exist? What does it support?
Yeah, it's quite a wild west, honestly. So there is one, I would say, central platform today, which unifies majority of the sources and different systems which are used for running the core business of the company. So if you think about, the sales, marketing, finances, supply chain, partners, whatsoever. So all this operations business is basically sourced from one big platform, which is about 15 petabyte of data. And there is a lot of going on, right? So different domains, different business owners, different business groups, and then kind of a cross-functional team, which is all type of, data engineers and the piece of data operations, data scientists, of course. So it's also like a multi-skilled and multi-operatable team, which was spread across the geography. We used a lot of people in US, but we had also people in US, outside of US, in Asia, in EMEA, in India, of course, as well. So that was this type of really great, I think, example of diversity and inclusion on cultural side, but also really bringing a lot of different skills, because you cannot win this type of delivery with just one single skill of engineering or data science per se.
And so who were your customers?
The customers,
your internal customers.
Yeah, well, the customers, there are multiple customers actually. So absolute majority, of course, is your internal customers, your key stakeholders. It's the sales, it's the marketing teams, finance, supply chain. Again, we had those separate company units as well, like a GitHub, for example, or LinkedIn, which also use our services and use our data, and we use their data, and it's kind of a interesting developments altogether. And we also interacted with the actually external customers, because so much interest for data also raised that interest from enterprise customers to talk to somebody at Microsoft who is the actual practitioner of the data. Yeah. So they would listen to our sales folks, but then they would say, can you give us somebody who actually runs this and who do know how to set, this data governance or, this federated work, or, how did you do something, right? And that's where we've been involved a lot in those external showcases, basically talking to the all set of different customers across the world and learning from them, like what's their data challenges, but also telling what, our story was and how did we navigate it through, and very honestly telling, with all the failures.
And did I read it right, Aleksejs, that you actually created a multi-billion-dollar data business out of your platform?
Yeah, that was a really interesting case. Yeah, it's true actually, and it's
a multi-billion-dollar data business.
Yeah, it's so the business is very well known.
Aleksejs,
yeah,
you are the first one on the show that has built a multi-billion-dollar data business. Congratulations, man.
Well, thank you, Alex. And I will explain, what that really is. And I have a big case study in the book itself. So Microsoft had a challenge with its support system and support processes. There was very, very old kind of decade-old process, which was called Premier Support. And so then the company decided to change it. They were struggling to find what's that new model should be. And then pretty soon they understood you have to go by subscription-based approach, where you do this on consumption-based, on subscription-based, and you also have to deliver with customer-centric pricing, which means that every customer would get an individual pricing, which is super tailored for the actual customer structure, with always regional distribution and, specific consumption and all that type of stuff. So that whole success of could you actually price your product and sell it to the customer was based on, are you able to get that data? Are you able to get that data and get it highly precisely? Because the customer should, believe to you in that sense that it's the actual data of a customer. And so we had to build this actually from scratch. So there was nothing existing in that space. And we had to build that full stack data delivery from multiple sources, aggregating it into the operational process with, ongoing scrutiny, with additional validations, with high curation of those customer structures to be able to enable that customer-centric pricing and ability to sell and repeatedly sell on the annual renewals and everything like this, that product. And we started from zero. And in the first year, we had 1.4 billion revenue out of this. And currently, the run rate is about between 5 and 6 billion revenue.
Amazing. And you as a data leader owned that business, or did you have a business partner that helped you to?
Of course, yes. I had a business partner. So there was a combo of three persons. There was one person who was the business sponsor and who created this business concept and provided the year coverage for us to work with. And then we had another person who was McKinsey person kind of poached to Microsoft, and she helped to operationalize this from the business side, and he was my main counterpart on delivering the value. And we did with the team entire data delivery, end to end for this product.
And how does it feel when you transition from being an internal data team seen as a costly cost center to a team that is generating multiple billions of new revenue?
Interestingly, that I don't feel we almost ever been seen as a cost center. So the way it worked in Microsoft is that you got some very basics of what you need for your data and for your super core capabilities. You get it, budgeted. With the target of a year-over-year reduction. Yeah, so let's say you got a 2 million for a year, and then say, okay, next year you will get 10% less, and next year you'll get 10% less. Right. This amount only enables some super, super basic things like, okay, the sales and marketing won't cry, and the things will not kind of drop when the lights will not be switched off. Yeah, but everything else which you would want to do with this, like investing into technology or investing into data architecture or onboarding some new business units and so on, you have to go and sell it to those stakeholders. You have to find those stakeholders, almost like your customers. You have to sell them the value. You have to secure that budget and establish the delivery. And so that's why we always felt that we have this, maybe 10 to 15% of our entire portfolio was kind of, paid and sponsored directly by the company by default. And everything else you have to rework every year, building these deliverables and building that, the plan and the financials around this and kind of selling it to the business and increasing your portfolio, increasing your operational amounts of money and people and everything. And that's how it went. So we never felt really being at a cost center in that sense.
Well, you can't in such an environment. So my question to you would be, how much % of your staff were engineers versus salespeople? In
the data team, you mean?
Yeah, because you have to do sales every year.
Yeah.
Or did you train the engineers to make that sound? Or were you the salesperson? Were you the salesperson for the business? No, I'm asking you. I mean, it's there is a funny side to that question, but there's also a serious side, and the serious side is most data teams need to sell their stuff in one way or the other. You know, like and when you look at who's on the team. That's not the natural born sellers that are on the team. I think nearly every function in the business is better at selling than the data function. Usually.
True.
Usually. Not yours.
Well, we had some really amazing team of people who came originally from the local teams, right? So they've been part of the sales and marketing teams before the company started, that high centralization of the data. And so these folks, they remained in their original geographies. And that's why we had this team, which was really spread around the world, with the people in France, in Germany, in Singapore, in Australia, you name it. And so those folks, they were really excellent in understanding the business needs. And then they got also tech savvy by understanding how do we do data, like what do we do actually with our data deliverables, processes, analytics, engineering, and so on. And so that type of a bridge persona, which could easily talk to the data engineers and explain them what are the requirements from the stakeholders, like what we need to deliver, operates on our engineering principles, with all the agile work and so on. But at the same time, could easily go into any business leader conversation and understand the landscape of how business sees the data, through their tools and systems and so on. Where are they struggling with that? All this type of thing. So that was our main kind of power to make the traction in the company with all that data work.
Interesting. I think that some of these roles today maybe are, McKinsey had later the term business translator. We then had product management as a rising role. I think all of these roles fundamentally do what you're describing, what you have coined there, which was really the bridge between the business and the tech, which is so important. But let's talk about your book. We are today in 2024. There's at least 15 years of people around the world writing books on data management and data. You decided to do another one. Why?
Yeah, I asked these questions to myself several times when I was writing this. I think there are mainly two compelling reasons for this work. And one was a very selfish reason. I wanted to document what the team did across all 15 years. Many people changed the roles, left the company. A lot of things happened. But I always felt very privileged to work with these people. And I found we really did so many interesting things, for the business, for the data, for many foundational things which are today in data. And so I felt kind of recording this story in some, storytelling way, not going deep into, how exactly we did something, very particularly, but giving that overall feel of what kind of challenge we had. How did we approach that? How did we work together as this multinational team, multicultural, super diverse? And how do we navigate that story? I thought it's a great thing to be recorded. On the other hand, it was also a fact that for many people outside of Microsoft, the company is probably looking as an absolute tech leader. And, much also in data and AI nowadays. And I think for many, it would be very hard to believe that 15 years ago, and even 10 years ago, and even 5 years ago, that company was not so well organized in terms of its own data structure. And that's what I think was for me one of those biggest differentiator. Like, why should you have this type of book? Because you bring a big name, you bring a lot of reputation of the company in the data. But besides this, you can see that the actual story and that maturity growth is super simple. And it's applicable even to, a very small enterprise which starts data journey today. With some very basics to start with keeping with business relevance, with increasing your maturity as you go. And that for me was probably one of his biggest kind of interesting points. I want people to understand that the Microsoft you may have perception of is a different company inside from the data and AI perspective and the maturity of those data processes.
You mentioned that there's almost like a sequencing of steps you can do. At the same time, there are no straight lines in nature, which means that it's very unlikely that you exactly went that kind of sequence at Microsoft. So maybe you can take us very briefly through that sequence, over the last 5 or 10 years, wherever you want to start, and say just some major steps in that journey, so we can see a bit the evolution. And don't worry if it's not a straight line, because I don't believe in it, I think it is always a bit of a different kind of structure, more natural, more organic.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always a line which goes like this, right? And it has some super high raise moments, and it also has some deep down moments. But I would say in the beginning, we spend a lot of time just reacting to the demand, reacting to the absence of data maturity.
And can you paint that as a picture? But I'm imagining a data team sitting in Europe, working on the CRM and sales data and finance data, and basically there's emails coming in, phone calls are coming in. Hey, there's a problem. Hey, there's a problem. Hey, there's a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
What kind of problems? Give one or two examples.
What kind of problems? Like I haven't changed that data. Like why it's different now? It's not my data. I haven't done it. Yeah, so somebody done it, right? Or I cannot find a deal. Yeah, the worst was, and it was one of the foundational problem. I cannot find that revenue. I know that the customer built something. We signed that. I cannot find it in the system where his revenue is. Yeah, and it's very personal at this moment. It's not just a statistical number, but if it's coming from the account manager, it's actually his next salary. And so he's very concerned, so to say, in a polite language, like where is that data, which he for sure knows should be in the system, but nobody could prove it and find it. And so this kind of a world of, living on that powder box, with all these escalations and constant angriness, from the people like, I don't understand what happened, find me this, find me that. So that was the reality when we started that journey. And when we had to mitigate a lot, but we also had to react. Yeah, you cannot just say, hey, give me a month, we will come back and sort this out.
So that doesn't sound exactly like the state you would like to be in as a data team. So if somebody is listening and is in that state, what would be the first 3 things you would do in such a state?
That's a great question. I think I would first really prioritize the most important business problems, right? So you cannot do everything at the same time. So you have to be selective and you have to pick, 1 or 2 things which you really kind of focus on trying to address it, right? The second thing, I would really try to eliminate any kind of like we and them. So it's an absolute partnership with the business users who are maybe not happy today, but they you need them and they need you as well. And that's what creates that unity of working together, learning about those challenges, them also learning about certain sophistications which we have with data. And that's what creates also massive foundation for a future success. Yeah. So I would definitely, try to create that like we. Yeah. It's all we together. And the third, I would search for a very practical way to scale. And my underline here goes for practical. So not the dreamy, Like, oh, we need, that new data platform, or, let's, buy something whatsoever. But to find like what actually works to scale, these efforts. And so we found a couple of times that scaling through data operations was much faster, much cheaper. And in that climate where, things are changing very frequently and very often, it was one of those most flexible ways of scaling something where you can quickly grow up demand or tweak it back or expand it to some new capabilities. So that would be our suggestion, to find what works from scalability perspective, but in a very real view.
Okay, and how did that story continue from there, where you left us?
I think at some point of time we obviously succeed, right? So when we managed that initial hit down, and we managed the amount of escalations, and we started to be more proactive with data. We started to be more, in a better understanding, like where the things will probably broke. And so we better, start in advance to provide some maintenance or some capabilities on a regular basis and so on. We also simplified a lot, right? So when we came, there was 1,000+ processes across the world. And believe me, every owner of that process was telling me, I have a very unique business need, and you don't understand it because it's my business and it's unique.
With very unique data coming out of it.
Of course, coming in and coming out, right? And then what we saw in 18 months afterwards is that those 1,000+ processes eventually became, I think, 72 services, which were, broadly available for any company user across entire world. And
so you drove really a lot of standardization of your core services as a data team, is that right?
Yeah, we standardized a lot, and that's not only about simplifying, it's one of the goals to simplify. Another goal while simplifying was to understand what would be the best future capability for that. Like, should it be a data application, for example? Should it be a data product in the future, right? Or this is maybe some fundamental synchronization problem between the roots or system of records, right, which needs to be addressed in the engineering way. So it's kind of, you're simplifying, you're analyzing like what is the right methodology for approaching these things in the future, and you're also learning a lot. This is absolutely amazing amount of data and business learning, which comes associated with that simplification work.
So let's fast forward a bit. So what was the next kind of bigger stage you've been in that journey at Microsoft?
Yeah, what we did next, we did two different things. So we kind of expanded in a breadth way. So we went into much more different domains. So we started with sales and marketing and finance and so on. And we started to look across the organization for getting more different business units to work with us.
And I guess in my experience, very often it is driven, very systematically, but also by a little bit of opportunism of the day. Did you make a similar experience? Oh.
We've been kind of on a wave, So you feel it, you get that.
There was a certain pull effect. There was a certain pull effect because he made that reputation. I know. That's a great place to be in when people start to come to you. And they stand in line basically, and you start. That's great.
And you grow and you deliver again with those additional successes, and you have bigger and bigger budgets. You have bigger and bigger team. Because addressing all this demand makes sense and so on. But you're also starting to learn on that side that, okay, you get even bigger problem to manage. And so it's kind of the scope is big. The understanding is, fantastic. You are so demanded person, like really, as you say, people coming to you and they want you to fix that issue for them quickly. But then you understand also that, like, okay, if we go this way, then it's a path to nowhere. We will not get thousands of people working for a data team. We will not operate, $500 million budget. So we have to start to think more thoughtfully and longer term, like how do we use now all that knowledge and kind of share that world of data with our stakeholders. Yeah, so we are not just the doers all the time, but we are starting to repack the things and as much as possible give it back to the business so that they can operate it themselves.
And this is where you started the part of the curve where it goes from the swinging from centralization to decentralization, or the swing came back.
Exactly. But it came back in a different reality, right? When it came to us, it was very ransom, yeah, and it's not structured, not optimized, right? And you return it in that perfect, like a Swiss watch quality shape. You say like, hey, this works. It's perfect. There is a manual for you, the whole support. We've been always very entrepreneurial. So we, even transferring those work back to business, we would say, we guarantee you 1 year of a white glove support. Yeah? So like whatever would happen, we would come in and help. Right? But that was...
So you create a risk warranty. You create a warranty basically of them. Yeah. So we decentralize, you will take ownership, but in the first year, nothing will be happening. And if something happens, it's on me and not on you.
Yes, it's a risk which you have to eliminate from their minds. Reality is that it never happened really from that actual risk happening. We knew what we're doing, and we knew that the people whom we interacting those days, they also get way more proficient over those years.
And how did something like this work? Did you then have to set up a local team with them? For them, like did you enable a local team? Did you help them to recruit it?
It was all kind of different, enterprise mechanisms. Yeah. So sometimes we would decouple even the portion of the platform to be a type of independent component. Sometimes we would give back the budgets with some established vendor contracts to support the work. Sometimes we even move the people around. So whatever works, it's kind of a case-by-case basis. But the idea was that if you have some really mature domain and you know that it's not just these particular people, but it's a business group which now have enough of that maturity, literacy, all that foundations established, and you sell them that independence opportunity. You sell them like, look, you have everything. And you could do even more because we will not slow down you anymore. Yeah? You could just go whenever you have and add your additional budgets, add your investments, hire more people because the data is perfect. It's hard to resist to this.
Or how did you act as a central team to support that? What was important to support such a federated model?
The most important, I think, honestly, was to navigate that change management. And change management on both sides. So very obvious is that change management, which is focused on your stakeholders. So how do you enable them? How do you create that belief on their side that it is a right model for them? They can operate. It's not getting some incremental costs issues to them and so on. But there is even bigger change management, actually, which has to be done on a data team side. Because the data team side was somewhat conservative in the thinking. It felt like we are growing endlessly. The budget's becoming bigger. There is some career opportunities forming, people seeing themselves already, managing, other people, and it's growing pyramid, and you can have some new positions and so on and so on. So it was even harder to manage this internally and organizationally, but that's not the way we're going to do.
Because people have the feeling that they are missing out, that it's not in their own best interest, because the role is also changing. The role is really changing. It's not only about, doing the services for others, but now it's about enabling others to do their services. It's a very different role that requires maybe slightly different skill sets, more communication. It's really a different world for the own team that needs to be managed very carefully.
Yes, and it creates a lot of uncertainty in that space, right? Because before that, it was that confirmed kind of linear growth with a lot of appreciation, with all that type of stuff. And then people would really, many people, and I don't feel anything bad in that space, but it was very natural for them to think like, guys, are you crazy? Like, what you're doing? We are in the best ever shape and capability. And now you're saying like, no, that's not going to work. We need to turn the direction the opposite way, and we need to start to federate. We need to give back, our capabilities, money, people, responsibilities. So that was really hard to manage from that change management perspective. But it was very strategic to do it.
So what would you, maybe one or two things that help?
I think two aspects always come in my mind. One is that with the data team itself, you have to paint like what is that new reality going to be. People love visualization. They don't buy when you say, oh, you will just switch to this role and it will be better. You need to really work hard to visualize it. And you need to find like what exactly for every person is that type of motivator. So somebody wants to go deeper into some technical capabilities. Somebody wants to do, this influence to the business leaders. So these type of things, you need to find like what speaks to every particular person in that space. And then it's becoming a different work because people got on the hook. They like the idea now. They really feel it is their path.
Yeah. And I think, people need a compelling vision of how the team will look like after the transformation.
Mm-hmm.
For the team, but also for them. I think both is equally important.
I agree. Yeah. Great.
And we underestimate that. And I think this is also a very important theme that you uncovered here that is underestimated. I think we have to deal so many times as data leaders and also as data teams with transformations. But many are not only transformations of your stakeholders, but they are transformations of your own teams and their own roles, including the data leader's role, which is transformed. And I think we underestimate it because this is cognitively really something that requires a lot of energy and attention, changing that identity almost of your own team while you have to change other people's identities in the business.
You're right. And I really learned that when there are some changes in a team itself or changes in a direction, it's a great moment to kind of re-educate everybody. To try to bring everybody on a same understanding, but not in a forced way through some artificial, company meeting or something like, hey, let's be all aligned, blah, blah, blah. No. But you're actually sharing like what each of the, people doing and how they believe it contributes to success. And you reshare it broadly. You get this through some plan sessions. You get it in one-on-ones. You get it in some small subsets of a team, sharing internally, like what we're doing, like what's the data analyst team is doing, why it's so important for the company, how they contribute to success. Also, where are they missing maybe some skills, potentially. And so you go across this.
Yes. And how can you support them to build those skills up? Exactly. I think that is equally important.
And this is becoming the real transformational moment of the data teams because they see now themselves as something bigger. They see that they can tap into the knowledge they never had before, right? And they can tap easily because there are approachable folks just around the corner who could support that.
Great. So tell me, where did this journey kind of like where did you take that team at its highest maximum? Did that, I guess this kind of federation was still an ongoing process because I guess that is something that takes years.
Yeah, federation went actually quite well overall. Not for everything, but for many aspects it went well. And we established like really good grasp on the business teams, managing those pieces of work. And for me, this was always the most, appreciable in that entire data transformation. Yeah, I remember one of those big data capabilities around the channel reporting. Yeah, so all the channel revenue which comes for Microsoft first-party and third-party products. We took it in an absolute kind of a chaotic way. And we rebuilt that whole process and, agreements with partners and built some frontline systems and, a lot of things. And 6 years later, we found the team on the Microsoft Operations business group who would be the perfect owner of this. And we made that transition back in a completely revamped capability, which was smooth and highly scalable. And I always feel that type of like, yes, that's the moment where you feel you did something right.
Very nice. Congratulations on that. So you had a beautiful journey. I think 15 years, is that right? 15 years overall in Microsoft.
Yeah.
You're now helping companies to grow, different companies to grow in their journeys. And I think your book is actually filled with these little stories and then like practical and how that relates to different pieces of any data management strategy or any data strategy. And one of the things that I like about the book is that it really shows almost like a building up of capabilities on top of each other. Like you start small, you build something, then you attach something else, then you build something else on top, then you change something, then you add this, create a certain strategy on top. So it's almost like a recipe that you can follow there through. So maybe in your own words, what would be you say, what are the different situations maybe businesses are in, and in terms of like the typical businesses that you see in terms of data management? We could call it maturity or states, and what would you advise them, depending on the state? Maybe let's start with the different states that you see.
Yeah, I would try to simplify this in a way that when you have this low maturity, so the data discoverability is low, the trust of data is also perhaps low, there are some numerous issues reported and so on. I would not start with any fundamental programs which are, long spanning and requires a lot of executive buy-in and support. Like data governance, for example. For me, to start at that point of time with data governance as a global program is advised by many, but for me feels highly counterintuitive. I would start with data management and try to just relieve that pain, get those wins, create trust in stakeholders that things are actually could be done better. And that's the moment where you can jump into some more, longer term programs in architecture or in data governance in many of those aspects. And it's still important always to have that lens, like what is the problem we're trying to solve, right? Because the data never will be perfect, especially across the companies such as Microsoft. But like navigating down exactly what is the value of improving here versus there. Are we for the cost savings? Are we for the revenue? Are we for the satisfaction? Are we navigating some compliance challenge? So what exactly is we actually trying to solve? So having those business metrics, not the data metrics, not like how many data objects you scrolled or changed, or how big is your data catalog, or that.
How big is your lake?
How big is your lake?
Wonderful metric.
Okay. So exactly. So that's what makes for me the most important. To really connect what business is using data for, where the work which data team is delivering, and have those business KPIs to lead the data work where it's possible. And sometimes, yes, it happens also that the data can lead the business, That's like already a super high maturity stage.
Okay, so that's kind of the ground state. What's a more mature state, but it's still not super mature, but it's kind of in between?
I think when you have some good sense of data stewardship in a company already, That's for me a high sign of the growing business maturity. When you have the data stewards, when you have, and I would call the data stewards like who is outside of the data team, who is actively interested and supportive of data initiatives.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Tom Redman calls them regular people.
Regular people, but like regular people who are interested in data, because some regular people might not be interested, but some, they really love it. And when you have
well, I think Tom's claim is that that's your job to make them interested.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. And then you get this type of level of supporters across the company who are, understands what the data team is delivering, who actively engages into this. This is a very important stage of maturity, because you can see that the organization, which is probably not right, organization is something impersonal, right? But you see that there are a lot of actual people in the company who starts to lean towards the value of data. And they want to grow that direction. They believe into this. It's part of their life. They share it. They not only do this as a daily job, but they share it in left and right. And that's how this, we can call it data culture or whatever, but for me, it's generally that appreciation of the data as a valuable asset, along with the literacy of what you do with this asset and what you also shouldn't do with that asset. That's what kind of grows that maturity to the next level.
Do you have any story to share? Anything that, any simple story that you've been through where you saw, wow, this is somebody where really a regular person is doing something with data that helps us as a company?
Oh, we've seen a lot of this, honestly. I mean, even when we've been already a strong data team, we've been discovering left and right these data functions embedded somewhere in the business. And you suddenly discover, it was almost, you're going from this opposite thinking. Yeah. So you look on the different business functions and you say, okay, we support sales and marketing, finance, supply chain, whatsoever. And then you say, why we don't support data centers? Like, nobody ever came to us from the data centers, but they should have a similar problem. If they don't have a problem, so either we don't know about this problem or they somehow fix that. Yeah, so let's go and learn. Let's reach the website and find out like what the people are doing there. And this was always a source of those new learnings, how people approach the data and what they're trying to solve. And sometimes it was absolutely wonderful discoverables where you learn yourself even, what to do. And it also was one in my life, not in book, but it was one in my life where I've stopped a massive sale of the Microsoft data to a third-party company. Because the business leader firmly believed that's in his interest to sell to a third party without any controls. Afterwards, since it would deliver some immediate business results from analytics. But it was something which we had to stop as soon as we learned about that.
Yeah, because you would sell off your assets and your customer trust.
Totally.
Yes. Good. And maybe let's go also to the highest maturity. What do you think the highest maturity of data strategy or data management is today that you can see in companies, or when do you think you kind of have made it to a high maturity state?
For me, one of the highest maturity stages would be if the leadership of the company actually uses its own data live. So instead of asking it to somebody to ask to somebody to prepare, they know where to go and take one dashboard, which is live, and use this dashboard live in the strategy or business planning meetings. Yeah. So you see the data, you use the data. That's one thing. The second thing, which we also realized that
can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
I don't think that is a high maturity. I think it becomes only a high maturity if, let's say, the CEO takes the dashboard, looks at it, makes a decision, and that was the right data and it's consistent and it's high quality, then it's high data management maturity. Because I know too many cases, and we have in Berlin many startups where the CEOs take decisions every day on a dashboard, but they have no clue where the data is from, if that's the right data, and if the quality is right.
Yeah. You're right. In our case, it was always so, meaning, hierarchical level before that the people would kind of triple validate, whenever what they go and show is the action. And that was super cumbersome and bureaucratic. And when we saw it, our top leaders finally start to use the data out of those dashboards, which are specially created for this, that's your sign that, like, okay, they understand what is there and they believe into this. And the second aspect, I would say that people also on the leadership levels, on the business leadership levels, they do know where the data is. Yeah, it's in an abstract way, but they understand, like, what, if you think about those assets as a part of the digital assets in the company, they understand that, yes, it's a part of that digital assets inventory, that we do have classified data in a different way. We have our customers' data also stored separated from the company's data, and this type of very basic, we can say, but very foundational aspects. It's not something abstract to them. They don't kind of look at you and say, like, oh, I don't know, like, what to answer to you. Yeah, they provide some good informed opinion of where the data is, all kind of data at a company, and how it's protected and how it's used.
Right. Very good.
Dream state.
Dream state. That's where we want to go. So we talked about a lot of things today, and I also feel we have to do another episode at some point to go deeper on a number of topics we have not covered today. But for now, and there's many of them, we didn't talk about data mesh. We didn't talk about the Pareto principle and how to apply it to data. We didn't talk about MDM, and how the role of MDM in modern data landscape. We didn't talk about, we touched a bit data domains, but not so much, And we didn't talk about the strategic dilemma that people have, the strategic data dilemma that you put up in the book. Mm-hmm. What is the strategic data dilemma? Let's cover at least that in this podcast, and we cover the rest in one of the next ones.
Well, for us, it was more about how do you, like what we spoke a little bit already, but it's like this, were you in control, or were you, let go certain things on its own, right? And we solved this multiple times. We faced that question. It started with outsourcing. So we realized that for scalability, you need a lot of outsourcing. And so we outsourced quite a lot. But when we also realized that, it really works well, but something you have to keep inside, and certain things you have to keep inside. And we created some inner loops. How do you keep that outsourcing and insourcing in a good balance, and where we support each other from a knowledge perspective? Then in our dilemma goes with federation versus centralization. It's again a big thing. Like, how do you manage that golden balance if it even exists, right? So we said also same issue later on the skill set of the people. So the evolution of the skill set and how you navigate that balance between engineers, data product managers, we would say nowadays, data scientists, data analysts. How do you, PMs again. So there's a lot of things which you also have to constantly kind of rebalance. And think about, like, what's right for this organization. There is never like a steady stage or a steady state, for at least my experience. But you can say, like, okay, I'm totally satisfied with what I have.
Very good. So maybe the main and most important teaching of your book is actually that we need to find balance as data leaders. So maybe some of your next reads during the summer break could be some old Zen master books and potentially some good yoga. Thank you so much, Aleksejs Plotnikovs, formerly data leader EMEA at Microsoft, and now advising companies across Europe and beyond on their data management journeys. Just published a wonderful book on data management strategy at Microsoft. Thank you so much for being with us, and hope to see you soon in one of our trainings as Master Coach and in one of the next podcasts.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
Borek Data Masterclass, where great data journeys begin.